Adam Creighton is our man in the United States, of course writes for the Australian newspaper, and he is their American correspondent. And let's have a chat here, because as we know, the legal documents that justified the raid on Trump's house have been released, but they look like Venetian blinds from the back of a car in the 1970s. Like, it's just line after line after line. Adam, that said, MSNBC still says on the little information they get out of this, he should be in jail.
Well, look, I certainly don't think he should be in jail. But as you say, Paul, it's very hard to know what to say about the case, because more than half of those 38 pages were entirely blacked out. But from the introduction, it seems that this is just an argument about where certain boxes of documents should physically be. And frankly, I don't think that actually passes the threshold for a home invasion of a former president, which of course is unprecedented. The so-called 184 classified documents, we don't really know what those are yet. We know that they were classified in a certain way, but we don't know how much damage would have been caused to the US if they had have been lost, say. So I think the case, at least in the court of public opinion, I think the case is fairly weak. And I think the government should have used other avenues to try to get them back, such as a subpoena or a district court judge order to secure the documents more carefully.
Well, also, a couple of weird things just about the raid, right? Which was his lawyer wasn't allowed to walk around with them while they were doing things, which you would imagine is part of your right. I mean, OK, you stand behind them, you're not touching anything, but you can see what's going on. I don't know why Trump won't release the footage of the raid. Maybe there's something to that. And look, obviously, if a genuine crime has been committed, no one's going to turn around and defend. But what is impossible here is, again, people need to understand that the word classified doesn't always mean details about the UFO that's living out the back of the White House, and it's not, where all the secret sort of super nukes are kept. There's a lot of stuff that seems fairly pedestrian that somebody decided to stamp classified on. Now,
that's true.
That doesn't get him off the hook for everything, but also don't assume that the word classified means state secret all the time.
Yeah, look, that's right. And also the wording of the Espionage Act in 1917 obviously was written in a completely different era, before photocopiers. It's extremely broad and sweeping, but on the other hand, it seems to imply that it does not apply to presidents of the United States too. That's one of the arguments Trump's lawyers make. They say, look, it clearly says in this act that it's about contractors of the US government and employees of the US government, and the president is not an employee of the US government, at least according to this argument. And the other argument, which I think is even stronger, is that the president can actually declassify whatever he wants, whenever he wants. He doesn't have to write it down. He can just say it. He can almost just think it. Now, this has never been tested before. It's an interesting legal argument, but certainly Trump's lawyers think it's a very powerful one.
Now, forgive me, I'm going to steal a couple of seconds from the outsiders. I'll give it back to them whenever they want it. But I wanted to talk here about how this ridiculous piece of legislation that passed, which was called the basically Stop Inflation Act, that actually will pump up inflation, supposedly is going to save the budget $100 billion, but then a week later he turns around and forgives a lot of people their university debts, which at least is $300 billion and could go all the way to $1 trillion, which of course comes out of the federal budget. Now, this sleight of hand is extraordinary. I get it, he's trying to super service a base, he's trying to keep kids on his side, but let's not pretend that this doesn't have an effect on the bottom line of the American taxpayer.
Oh, look, it certainly does, Paul. You're quite right, and that the $300 billion is probably the lowest estimate, and the tax increases in that Inflation Reduction Act, they, as is usual, probably won't raise as much as the government hopes. So yeah, look, the US government's in a terrible fiscal situation. It's got enormous budget deficits year after year. Its debt has increased by more than almost any other country during the pandemic, and it's inevitable that at some point taxes are going to have to go up to close that gap. And when that comes, it's going to be very painful for ordinary Americans.
Thank you, great man. Thank you for getting up early for us on a Sunday morning. So I owe you one. Thanks, big Paul. Time. Thank you, Adam. Read your stuff in the Australian newspaper.